Joan of Arc remains one of history's most extraordinary figures. A peasant girl who claimed to hear divine voices and led French armies to stunning military victories during the Hundred Years' War. Her battle record is remarkable, not just for the tactical brilliance of her campaigns, but for the unwavering conviction that she was guided by angels sent directly from God. Today we explore the military achievements of this legendary figure, examining how a teenage girl from Domremy transformed the course of European history. In 1341, France and England were locked in a bitter conflict that had raged for generations. The English had conquered vast territories in France, and the French monarchy seemed powerless to stop them. Soldiers from both nations clashed across the countryside, devastating towns and villages. The French crown was weak, and many questioned whether the kingdom could survive. Enter Joan of Arc, born around 1412 in the small village of Domremy in northeastern France. She was an ordinary peasant girl with no military training, no formal education, and no connections to nobility. Yet she claimed that at age 13 she began hearing voices. She said Saint Michael the Archangel spoke to her, followed by Saints Catherine and Margaret. These voices, she insisted, told her that she had a divine mission: to lead the French army to victory and ensure the rightful king was crowned. When Joan was 16, she traveled to the court of the Dauphin Charles, the uncrowned heir to the French throne. She convinced him of her divine calling, and incredibly, Charles allowed this teenage girl to join his military campaign. What followed was one of the most astonishing military records in history. In May 1429, Joan participated in the Battle of Orleans, one of the most crucial engagements of the Hundred Years' War. The city had been under English siege for months, and the French seemed defeated. Yet Joan's presence and conviction inspired the French troops. Leading cavalry charges and encouraging soldiers to fight with renewed faith, Joan helped break the English siege. Orleans fell back into French control, and the victory resonated across France like a miracle. The success at Orleans was just the beginning. Joan went on to participate in a series of rapid military campaigns throughout 1429 and 1430. The Battle of Jargeau followed, where Joan again led French forces to victory. Then came Meun-sur-Loire and Beaugency, both won by the inspired French armies under Joan's influence. Each victory was faster than the last, each more dramatic. French soldiers began to believe that God himself fought beside them, that the teenage girl in armor was truly an instrument of divine will. The Battle of Patay in June 1429 was perhaps Joan's most decisive tactical victory. Here, the French crushed an English army decisively, routing them completely. Joan's strategic insight and the morale boost she provided to French troops created a military machine that seemed unstoppable. Her enemies grew desperate. The English and their Burgundian allies knew they had to stop Joan. In May 1430, Joan was captured during a siege at Compiègne. She was sold to the English, who put her on trial for heresy and witchcraft. The trial was politically motivated, designed to undermine French confidence and prove that Joan's voices were demonic. Joan was convicted and burned at the stake on May 30th, 1431, at just 19 years old. But her military legacy endured. In the 13 battles and sieges where she played a significant role, Joan never experienced a military defeat. Her record was perfect: 13 victories and not a single loss. This is virtually unprecedented in military history, especially for someone with no formal training. Even more remarkably, she achieved these victories in less than a year of active military service. From her first engagement at Orleans in May 1429 to her capture in May 1430, Joan's entire military career spanned just 1 year. In that single year, she transformed the course of the Hundred Years' War. The French armies that had been demoralized and retreating suddenly became aggressive and confident. The English, who had seemed on the verge of total victory in France, began losing territory rapidly. Joan's victories created a psychological shift in the war. French soldiers fought with renewed faith and patriotism. Soldiers believed they were fighting alongside heaven itself. English soldiers, by contrast, grew fearful of this girl they called a witch. They saw her as supernatural, as a force they could not defeat through ordinary means. Joan's impact extended beyond the battlefields. Her presence at court and her successful military campaigns legitimized the Dauphin Charles's claim to the throne. After her victories, Charles was crowned King Charles VII in Reims Cathedral, fulfilling part of Joan's divine mission as she understood it. The coronation of a rightful French king was a turning point in the nation's history. It gave the French monarchy the spiritual and political authority it needed to continue the war effort successfully. Joan believed her voices told her specific things about the future. She claimed the Archangel Michael told her that the English would be driven from France. She believed she would be captured, but that France would ultimately triumph. In a sense, both predictions came true. She was captured, but within 2 decades of her death, the English were indeed driven from France. The 100 Years' War ended with a decisive French victory, and France emerged as a unified, powerful nation. The question of whether Joan actually heard divine voices has fascinated scholars for 500 years. Some argue she was a true mystic, genuinely communicating with the spiritual realm. Others suggest she suffered from a condition like temporal lobe epilepsy, which can produce auditory hallucinations. Still others propose she was a charismatic leader whose absolute conviction inspired those around her, making her seem almost supernatural. Regardless of the source of her voices, Joan's military record speaks for itself. She won every battle she participated in. She inspired armies to do impossible things. She changed the course of history. Joan was canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church in 1920, more than 400 years after her death. She is the patron saint of soldiers and of France itself. Her legacy endures as a symbol of courage, faith, and the power of conviction. In modern times, Joan of Arc has inspired countless works of art, literature, film, and music. Her story continues to fascinate because it represents something extraordinary. An ordinary person who believed absolutely in a divine calling and achieved things that seemed impossible. Her battle record remains unmatched. 13 engagements, 13 victories, 0 defeats. She never lost a single battle she participated in. In the annals of military history, such a record is almost unheard of. Even the greatest generals in history experienced defeats. Napoleon lost at Waterloo. Caesar was betrayed at the Senate. Alexander the Great never lost a battle, but he had years of military training and led armies with years of experience. Joan had neither. She was a teenager with no military education, yet her record surpasses that of many legendary commanders. When historians examine Joan's military record, they find several factors that contributed to her success. First, her absolute conviction was inspiring. Soldiers fought harder when they believed God fought beside them. Second, her timing was perfect. She arrived when French morale was at its lowest and when a shift in the war's momentum was possible. Third, she was working with experienced commanders who understood strategy and tactics. Joan's role was not to create strategy from nothing, but to inspire execution and boost morale. Fourth, the English had begun to overextend their supply lines and military commitments. The tide of the war was already turning slightly in France's favor by 1429, though no one realized it yet. Joan's victories accelerated this trend dramatically. Her opponents in battle were formidable. The English had some of Europe's finest soldiers and commanders. They had defeated the French repeatedly throughout the 100 Years' War, yet Joan's armies beat them consistently. This speaks to the extraordinary impact of morale and inspiration on military outcomes. Joan's story also illustrates the power of narrative and belief in warfare. The English believed Joan was a witch and a supernatural enemy. This belief made them more cautious and less confident. The French believed Joan was a saint and a divine instrument. This belief made them bold and aggressive. The same battles, the same soldiers, but the narrative surrounding them created entirely different outcomes. Joan's battle record also had significant consequences for European history. Her victories helped establish French national identity. She became a symbol of French resistance and French pride. This sense of national identity, forged in the fires of her military campaigns, helped France become a unified nation-state. Prior to Joan, France was fragmented, with regional nobility holding more power than the king. Joan's victories and her crown at Reims helped centralize royal authority. The modern nation of France owes something to Joan's military achievements. Furthermore, Joan's victories helped end the 100 Years' War. This conflict had lasted more than a century and devastated both France and England. The decisive shift created by Joan's campaigns contributed to the eventual English withdrawal from France. This withdrawal allowed both nations to rebuild and move toward the modern era as distinct sovereign states. Joan's military record and legacy continue to inspire discussion and admiration. She represents the triumph of conviction over cynicism, of courage over fear, of faith over doubt. Her 13 victories in 13 engagements remain a stunning military achievement. For a teenager with no formal training to accomplish what seasoned generals struggled to achieve is remarkable beyond measure. Joan of Arc's battle record stands as a testament to the power of belief, the importance of morale in warfare, and the potential for one person to change history. Whether her voices came from heaven, from her own mind, or from somewhere else entirely, the historical impact of her military campaigns cannot be denied. She won every battle. She never experienced defeat. She changed the course of a war that had consumed a century. She helped crown a king and establish a nation. For these achievements alone, Joan of Arc deserves recognition as one of history's greatest military figures, regardless of one's beliefs about her divine calling.